An astronaut named Theo Cooper wakes up in jail after being arrested because he got in trouble for being drunk and causing a scene the night before. After Theo is released, his boss, Walter Anderson, informs him that if they could have found someone else in time, he would have been kicked off the upcoming space mission. Walter didn't give Theo a chance to go home and clean up. Instead, he whisked him to a media conference. At the media conference, Walter explains that the mission is an inquiry to study the psychological effects of deep room excursions and planning for upcoming manned missions. The company behind the process, Kepler, wants to determine how astronauts will respond to unexpected obstacles during the simulated room journey. Astronauts will be confined in a dummy vessel planted underground to make the imitation more authentic. When a reporter asks about the astronauts' concerns, Dr. Emily McTeer says they might start seeing things differently because they're cut off from the outside world. Then at the end of the press conference, the engineer Cole Dvorak is introduced, who will be responsible for creating weekly videos to update the public about the simulation. Bug Kieslowski, who will be in charge of the ship's life systems, tells the journalist that he will be doing his own experiments during the simulation. When a reporter asks Theo, the mission's captain, what he thinks about the simulation, he says nothing, citing he's got a hangover and he recently broke up with his girlfriend. At the end of the conference, Walter hints that there will be curveballs in the store waiting for the astronauts. During the photo session, he discreetly reminds Emily that they agreed about their deal. Finally, he sends the astronauts underground and warns them that if they quit early, it will hurt their careers. After opening the hatch, the astronauts descend one by one into the underground ship. They steal a final look at the trees and the hills before entering. Later, the astronauts don their spacesuits and perform a system check to prepare for the simulated launch. A few minutes into the countdown, the computer informs the team that their payload is still connected to the ship. Walter warns them that the ship will crash if they don't release it. Theo takes a moment to think before telling the team to change the ship's trajectory. After making the necessary adjustments, the payload is separated from the ship. Walter praises the team for passing the initial test and reveals that he's left gifts in their living quarters. Bug finds a notebook to write down his thoughts, while Cole finds a pile of adult magazines. Emily finds a piece of origami paper, and Theo gets 3 sets of playing cards. Theo goes to the clinic for his regular checkup, and Emily asks him about his mood. He opens up and explains that he is feeling depressed, angry, and lost. When Emily asks why, Theo gets frustrated and tells her not to play games with him. She explains that it's part of the assessment. Then Theo tells her that the woman he was going to marry had rejected him and ended the relationship. Emily acknowledges the complexity of their situation, but doesn't offer an explanation for the sudden breakup. As they gather for dinner, Emily prepares to administer vaccines to the team. Cole voices his objections, but Emily cautions him, citing their increased vulnerability to viruses due to their close quarters. Eventually, Cole relents after Theo and Bug tease him about his fear of needles. The initial week sails smoothly, devoid of any hitches. On the 26th day, a loud blast reverberates through the ship, swiftly followed by a violent tremor. Emily speculates that it's a simulated event, suggesting they might be traversing an asteroid belt. Yet Bug interjects, noting the significant asteroid belts lie far beyond Mars. Despite their efforts, attempts to reach mission control prove futile. Shortly after, the computer alerts them to a recalibration of the ship's solar power storage. Cole inspects the batteries, finding them in perfect condition, leading him to deduce that the solar panels must have sustained damage. Theo recognizes this as one of the unexpected challenges of the mission and encourages the team to conserve power. A few days later, Emily tries to reach out to Walter without informing the team and is surprised when Theo comes up to her to ask what she's up to. She explains that she's trying to get in touch with mission control, and when there's no response, she guesses that the lack of communication was part of their simulation. As Emily heads back to her room, Theo unexpectedly wishes her a happy birthday. As Emily goes to her room back, Theo recalls the memories of their intimate moments before the mission. Theo reminisces about a conversation they shared in bed, where Emily questioned the wisdom of their relationship, and Theo assured her he didn't mind. As the days go by, Cole gets angrier and angrier. After 200 days of administering vaccines to the team, he uploads his videos to PC and experiences hallucinations, in which he saw a warning text that Emily's poisoning him. On day 218, Bug catches a mouse in his laboratory and proudly shows it to the rest of the team. Cole tells Bug that the mouse is unsanitary and that he should get rid of it, but Bug tells him that he's part of their temporary crew. In a fit of rage, Cole grabs the mouse and crushes it underfoot. During a heated exchange between Cole and Bug, Theo intervenes to calm the situation, but Cole redirects his aggression towards Theo, forcefully pushing him against the wall. Their confrontation escalates until Emily steps in to halt the violence. In his room, Cole checks himself for injuries, only to be confronted by hallucinations of blood dripping from his nose and face. Realizing it's a figment of his imagination, Cole confides in Emily at the infirmary. Concerned, Emily suggests dehydration might be the cause and advises Cole to prioritize self-care. Emily gently probes Cole about his lack of communication about his family throughout the mission, suggesting that connections could ease the mission's strain. Cole reveals his distant relationship with his family, recounting how they sent him to boarding school at a young age and ceased visitation shortly after. Attempting to shift the mood, Cole awkwardly flirts with Emily, who promptly rebuffs his advances. Cole swiftly apologizes for his misstep. Later, Cole's attempt to upload his videos triggers another hallucination, this time a disturbing message. They hate you. When he sees his childhood photo on screen, Cole's pent-up emotions take over, and he throws the keyboard on the table, breaking it. At Bug's psychological evaluation, Emily asks him about his feelings of guilt for abandoning his son. Bug admits that he had wanted to see Sam before he left, but Emily's suggestion of writing a letter to Sam is met with reluctance, as Bug fears it won't reach his son. With just 35 days left, Bug's isolation worsens, and Emily finally convinces him to come out of his room, and he engrossed in drawing a maze on his walls. Bug's isolation causes him to hallucinate about Sam. Convinced he sees his son crawling through a vent, he follows the delusion and finds Sam playing on a swing and excitedly tells him about his astronaut selection. Sam innocently inquires about his absence, and Bug admits that he won't be home for a while. Out of nowhere, Sam vanishes, and Bug is left confused and alone in his room. On the 373rd day, the crew hears loud banging above them, making them worried. Theo reminds everyone to follow the rules and ignore the noise. Later that night, Cole wakes up to strange sounds outside his room. When he investigates, he finds a scary-looking man in the kitchen. Cole quickly goes back to his room and tells Theo, who goes to check it out. Cole reported the intruder to the rest of the ship's crew. The crew found the man trying to get away through a vent, but he loses consciousness and was taken to the med bay. When Emily asked how the man had gotten in, Cole said he had gone through a science panel. Bug thought something bad was going on outside due to the man's condition. The crew became worried when Bug collapsed too. Emily felt drowsy and took some pills before bed. While everyone was asleep, the computer warned that there was a lack of oxygen in the ship. In the middle of the night, Theo wakes up feeling like he can't breathe. Frantically, he alerts his crewmates, pounding on their doors. Cole responds, but Emily remains unresponsive. Breaking into her room, Theo discovers Emily unconscious, not breathing. Acting swiftly, he performs CPR until Emily revives. Racing to the infirmary, Theo finds it empty, the intruder vanished. Cole reveals that the breach caused by the intruder mixed outside air with theirs, depleting their oxygen. Theo argues that this shouldn't have happened with fresh air. Emily warns of potential hallucinations and memory loss from oxygen deprivation. Theo proposes leaving the ship to save Emily, but Cole insists it's still part of the simulation, triggering an argument. In his fury, Cole attacks Theo, prompting Bug to intervene, rendering Cole unconscious. Theo and Bug venture outside through the vent, expecting lush surroundings, but are met with a bleak, dusty environment, shattering their expectations. Before re-entering the ship, Theo directs Bug to gather a dust sample for analysis. Upon sharing their findings with the others, Cole speculates that Mission Control relocated them inside a massive dome. Soon after, Bug confirms that the dust contains armalcolite, an anomaly on Earth. Theo urges the crew to don their spacesuits for further exploration. As they venture outside, Cole maintains that the experiment is ongoing, theorizing that the injections they received were psychotropic drugs, inducing suggestion and paranoia. After an hour's walk, they stumble upon an abandoned house. Inside, Theo uncovers a photo of the intruder and his family, while Emily discovers a map with crossed-out locations, except for one, Tranquility. Determined to unravel the mystery, they decide to head to Tranquility in search of answers. Upon arriving, the astronauts cautiously remove their helmets and are astonished to find breathable air. They spot a man standing outside a diner. Curious, Theo approaches and asks him what happened to the world, but the man doesn't seem interested in answering. Instead, he gestures for them to come inside the diner. Once inside, the man introduces himself as Zell and offers them food. Cole notices that the other people in the diner look familiar, like the reporters from the press conference and the woman who appeared in the magazines Walter gave him. After sitting down with them, Zell asks if they have met anyone else who has survived. As Theo presses Zell on what happened, he realizes that they don't know. He then explains that no one knows what happened exactly. Zell claims that a dark shape in the sky caused a dust cloud and lifted him up. He speculates that maybe they are the only survivors. Cole notices that Zell wears a hearing aid in his ears and suspects that he's getting information from Walter. Theo asks how the town survived, and Zell tells them that they just lucked out. He says they can stay overnight, but they have to leave early in the morning. Cole decides to unwind with a drink at the bar, but Theo insists the team stick together, so they all accompany him. After sharing a drink, Cole becomes engrossed in conversation with a woman at the bar. The other patrons block the view, causing the crew to lose sight of Cole and the woman. Concerned, the crew waits for Cole's return, but he doesn't show up after several hours. They reluctantly head back to the diner to rest. Theo suggests someone keep watch, and Bug volunteers for the first shift. As Theo and Emily drift off to sleep, Bug enters the bathroom and begins to hallucinate, imagining himself in a hospital visiting his son Sam. He questions the doctor about Sam's condition, but the doctor's somber expression sends shivers down Bug's spine as he realizes his son is gone. Exiting the bathroom, Bug encounters Sam in the hallway, but the boy quickly disappears, leaving Bug startled and shaken. Bug attempts to chase after Sam, but collides with Zell instead. Upon awakening, Emily and Theo inquire about Cole and Bug's whereabouts. However, Zell denies seeing them, attributing their absence to oxygen deprivation-induced hallucinations. As Theo searches for hidden microphones, Zell abruptly instructs them to return to their ship. Theo becomes more suspicious when he realizes they never mentioned being on a ship to Zell. Zell brandishes a knife, prompting Emily to urge Theo to leave the diner. Outside, they encounter a fierce dust storm, forcing them to seek alternative shelter until it subsides. However, they become separated in the darkness. Theo finds himself in the diner's kitchen, where he discovers a man trapped in a small cage pleading for help. Theo releases him, but as he rushes out, he accidentally collides with a woman holding a knife, resulting in a stab wound to his abdomen. As Theo staggers outside, he encounters Emily, who is being trailed by some of the town's peculiar inhabitants. Emily and Theo rush back to the bar to hide and take care of Theo's wounds. The bartender comes back and spots them, so they quickly flee to their ship before he can tell anyone else. Eventually, they find the house they had seen earlier and decide to stop there to finish treating Theo's wound and rest. As Emily tries to sleep, Theo asks her about what Walter said to her before they left for the ship. Emily admits that Walter reminded her about their agreement to end their relationship. She explains that Walter told her to break up with Theo to see if they could still do their jobs well, even if they were no longer together. Theo suggests they could have pretended to break up, but Emily thinks Walter would have figured it out because he's keeping a close eye on them. Theo says he would have told Emily if Walter had spoken to him about it directly. After a while, Emily wakes Theo up to go back to the ship. When they arrive, they search for Bug and Cole, but they can't find them anywhere. As Theo closes the hatch, he spots 3 men nearby and quickly alerts Emily. Grabbing a fire extinguisher, Theo ventures outside again. Soon, Zell and the diner chef enter the ship in search of them. Outside, Theo confronts the bartender and sprays him with the fire extinguisher. Despite the bartender's resistance, Theo manages to knock him unconscious. Hurrying back inside, Theo encounters the chef and a brief struggle ensues, ending with Theo overpowering and killing him. Taking the chef's knife, Theo continues his search for Zell. Zell eventually finds Emily, but Theo intervenes, seizing Zell from behind. However, Zell breaks free by elbowing Theo. Theo demands to know what happened to Cole and Bug, but Zell insists they're in town till now. Zell places his knife on the table and suggests they return to town together. Theo agrees and puts down his knife, but then swiftly pushes the table towards Zell and lands several punches on his face. In retaliation, Zell slams Theo's head onto the table and kicks him to the ground, delivering repeated blows. Attempting to stab Theo, Zell is interrupted when Emily arrives and plunges a knife into his back. Tragically, Theo succumbs to his injuries just as the countdown marking the end of the experiment concludes. Walter's face appears on the screen, congratulating them on completing the simulation. Confused and bewildered, Theo and Emily exchange looks, pondering whether their ordeal was all part of the experiment. At Walter's urging, they step outside, hand in hand, unsure of what awaits them. As the hatch opens, Theo draws a deep breath, his eyes drawn to the light streaming into the ship. Thanks for tuning in, guys.